This is Bob Oliphant from the Westford Historical Society and Museum, bringing you episode 44 of the Westford Wardsman podcast. The Westford Wardsman newspaper was part of Turner's Public Spirit, a weekly newspaper in Ayr a century ago. In this episode, we'll be reading the Wardsman for the week ending Saturday, October 31st, 1908. I'll add commentary to elaborate on what was happening in Westford 114 years ago. The first section covered in the October 31st issue is the Westford Center section. A most successful husking party was held at the home of George E. Gould and Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Blodgett Friday evening of last week. The house and grounds were appropriately trimmed with Japanese and jack-o'-lanterns, and many bushels of corn were husked. A bountiful and prettily served supper was enjoyed by the guests. After the husking room was made for dancing, with music by Mr. Blodgett on the violin. There were about 75 present. Mrs. M.J. Wheeler has been confined to the house the past week with a severe cold. Principal and Mrs. Woodward are getting settled in their new home on Boston Road. Reverend E. H. Roper of Portland, Oregon, has been a recent guest of Mrs. Caroline Atwood's. This was Reverend Elijah Roper, who was pastor of the Union Congregational Church from 1897 to 1902. I think Caroline Atwood was the music director there, actually. Westford people are sincerely thankful for the people in our sister town of Littleton that Monday night's serious conflagration did not extend farther than it did. Also, they would extend their sincerest sympathy to Mr. Stiles and Mrs. Lawrence, who have many friends in Westford in their serious loss. We'll be reading more about the fire shortly. Reverend Frank D. Atherton, assistant pastor of Morgan Memorial Chapel, Boston, will speak at the evening service at the Congregational Church on Sunday. Many who know something of the various phases of work of this institution will be glad to hear Mr. Atherton's account. Last Sunday evening at this church, Mr. Marshall gave an interesting talk on the medical and industrial work accomplished by our foreign missionaries. It was illustrated with the stereopticon with a particularly good set of pictures. Edwin N.C. Barnes, supervisor of music in the schools, is to give a song recital at the Town Hall Monday evening, November 2nd. Gunnar Ekman, violinist, Miss Alice Dean Spaulding, reader, and Miss Sarah Horblett, accompanist, will assist Mr. Barnes. Edward Felch has lived in the tenement over the old store for some time, has secured a position in Natick, and with his mother will move there November 1st. I think the old store referred to here is the old Wright and Fletcher General Store at 40 Main Street that is now the site of Muffins on Main. The next section is called Wedding. An autumn wedding of much interest to Westford people is one that took place in Manchester, New Hampshire on October 28th, when Miss Dorothy May Sleeper was united in marriage to Chester Martin Hartwell, Harvard class of 1905, of Littleton. The maid of honor was Miss Natalie Sleeper, only sister of the bride, and Richard Laws Hartwell, the groom's only brother, was best man. Owing to the recent bereavement in the bride's family, the wedding was a quiet one, only the immediate relatives of the bride and groom and a few friends being present. I should mention that the bride's father, Dr. Walter J. Sleeper of Westford, died on October 12, 1908, just a couple of months previously, and her mother, Emma Chadwick Sleeper, had died in Westford July 24, 1907. The next section is the About Town section. The selectmen have had the usual difficulty in securing persons to serve as precinct officers at election next Tuesday. The town was unanimous in dividing into voting precincts, but not so unanimous for the service as officers of these precincts. Daniel H. Sheehan is running his wooden, woolen, cotton, cider, vinegar combination mill by gasoline, there being no dam to back up the water and no water to back up the dam. The work of time has been gradually reducing the dam to that dust which is the estate of all things, while the gradually diminishing of the water must be charged up in a large degree to wasteful and reckless destruction of forests, which has taught foreign countries such costly lessons in drought and flood. And I'm sure it was also due to the drought that the town had been going through. What a pity that America must be at the expense of learning this lesson when history hoists the signal of alarm. The foundation of this old mill and what's left of the dam and the mill pond can be seen off Lowell Road, across the road from the Pelatiah Fletcher House at 54 Lowell Road. In the suit of George W. Bussey against the Lowell and Fitchburg Street Railway, the jury awarded a verdict of $125. Mr. Bussey sued the company for trespass, breaking down fences and cutting down trees at various times in May and June 1907. That was when the street railway line was put in. The jury visited the premises last week Friday. The plaintiff claimed $1,000 in damages. The defendants claimed not to have exceeded the rights granted by the selectmen. Pratt and Devine for the plaintiff, F.A. Fisher for the defendant. Actually, I think that was probably E.A. Fisher, Edward Fisher of Westford. Renee DeZiel on the Lowell Road is seriously afflicted with an affection of the eyes that comes close to the borderline of blindness. Specialists from Lowell are probing for sight. The rain, the glorious rain, the long-delayed rain, exclamation point. Now that it has arrived, may it be sufficient to settle all dusty questions and reign supreme over all dry occasions. The next section is fire. In the early afternoon of Thursday last week, a threatening, fierce woodland fire for its size got under headway on land of Hammett Wright, Harry Fletcher, and John A. Healy on the northerly slope of Snake Meadow Hill, northeast of Graniteville. Snake Meadow Hill is the hill above North Main Street and North Street that overlooks Graniteville. That's where the new town garage is located. Fire Warden John A. Healy responded with a lot of volunteers equipped with chemical fire extinguishers, which soon brought the fire to smoke and from smoke to surrender. About 7 acres were burned over. A lack of that breezy condition of atmosphere is to be credited in making honorable mention of reasons why the acreage burned was so small. The next day, about 1 o'clock, another fire started in the direction of Cold Spring. Owing to the quick response of the Abbott Hose Company of Westford and the A.R. Schote Company of Graniteville with volunteer citizens, the fire was soon forced to accept the tender mercies of annihilation. Only about 1 acre was wearing mourning on account of the fire. The next section is Grange. For an inspiring and exemplification of the fraternal spirit, for a literal supper of the fruits of the farm, for the personal greetings of the patrons, for large and conveniently adjusted hall room, why, go to Groton. And that was the exact movement of 90 members of Westford Grange Tuesday evening in a neighbor's night entertainment with Groton Grange. One barge loaded left Westford Town Hall at 6 o'clock p.m., going by way of Graniteville and the Groton Road and carrying 30 happy singing single patrons. Barge the second left the town hall at 6:30 and went by way of Forge Village, License Spring, and Ridge Hill Tavern, carrying 24 patrons whose youthful inclinations were strongly in the direction of the rising sun. They were able to be in good spirits when they reached out for the hospitality of Groton without any fortification of spirits by fluid spirits. The balance went by single teams or else balanced at home. The entertainment was furnished by Westford Grange and included music by the Grange Orchestra, J. Willard Fletcher clarinet, Alvin Nelson and Arthur Blodgett cornets, Mr. Miller violin, William Wall drums, and Mabel Miller piano. The appreciative spirit frequently applauded them into, quote, please play that again, end quote, or something else that has the same, quote, can't keep my feet still movement to it. Mrs. May Wright added volume to the occasion by song. E.G. Boynton arrested all attendees to sleepiness by comic song. He, being a constable, he could just do this effectively. No handcuffs, no Billy, except, quote, a little billy goat, end quote. I think that was probably the name of one of his songs. Mrs. Alvin Nelson read several selections so effectively that the reading of them over again was called for. The last number on the program was the short farce, Coals of Fire, which helped to warm up the occasion. The actors who got a warming up were Joseph Wall, J. Everett Woods, Fred and Charles Blodgett, and S. Samuel L. Taylor. The next section is the Graniteville section. Grand Chief Companion, Miss Josephine Mahoney of South Boston, made her first official visit here to Cameron Circle, Companions of the Foresters of America, on Tuesday evening. This event had been looked forward to by the Circle members for several days, and a large number were present to greet her on this occasion. After the regular order of business was dispensed with, there were speeches by visiting friends, followed by a brief reception to the Grand Chief Companion, which enabled all those present to meet her personally. Refreshments were then served, followed by a social hour, during which dancing was enjoyed. The whole affair was very enjoyable and reflects credit on the committee in charge. The local stone contractors are still doing a rushing business, and there is such a strong demand for block paving that one of the foremost contractors was obliged to work his men last Sunday in order to fill the many cars that were in waiting. The stone men are taking every advantage of the fine weather, are in hopes of filling their contracts before the cold weather sets in. Graniteville people take an interest in the serious fire in Littleton Monday night, where Fred Oscar Stiles, a former resident here, was burned out, losing his fine house, barn, and 3 valuable horses. Fortunately, Mr. Stiles and family escaped injury, but it seems as though he is getting more than his share of bad luck, for he has not yet recovered from a serious injury to his leg sustained in a runaway accident some few weeks ago. The people here deeply sympathize with Mr. Stiles and his family in the loss of their home, for it comes at a time when he was being heard from in the business world. The loss of Mrs. Grace Lawrence's house is also to be regretted, but she was not so well known here as the Stiles family. The next paragraph is called A Young Linguist. It's kind of interesting, actually. Although Graniteville does not lay any claim to being an education center, the people are justly proud of their children, and the many boys and girls here that are proficient in different languages. One case that stands out clearly from all others is that of little Stanislaw Bochenko, the 5-year-old son of Mr. and Mrs. John Bochenko. I think that name is now Bohenko in Westford. The subject of this sketch is a bright little Polish boy who is able to converse freely in Polish, Italian, French, and English. He is better known to his playmates as Stanley Smith, and although only 5 years of age, he often acts as interpreter for many of the storemen, peddlers, and different families in the vicinity in which he lives. He has not as yet attended the public schools, as his parents find that he learns very readily, and they do not care to press him with more knowledge until he is a trifle older. One of the Boston Sunday papers recently published an article about a little boy that spoke 3 languages, and although Graniteville is only a country village, it can go them one better by giving them the story of this little Polish boy who can speak 4 languages. Stanley Smith is mentioned every now and then in the Wardsman up through the early 1920s, and I believe he ended up as being the valedictorian of his class at Westford Academy when he graduated. The next section is the Forge Village section. It is expected that the new schoolhouse, what we know now as Cameron Senior Center, will be ready for occupancy in 2 weeks. Joseph Wall, the well-known painter and decorator, is at work on the interior. The school children, under the direction of Mr. Barnes, assisted by the teachers, are rehearsing a cantata to be given at the dedication of the new building. When completed, Forge Village will have a school building to be proud of. It is equipped with all the latest improvements, has 2 wide separate stairways, double swinging doors, and every protection in case of fire. Frank Collins has accepted a position as draftsman at Sargent's Machine Shop, Graniteville. A daughter was born last Saturday to Mr. and Mrs. Napoleon Milo. This was Alice Inez Milo, who was born on October 24, 1908 in Westford. The Festival of All Saints' Day, November 1st, will be commemorated in the Forge Mission House by services at 4:30, when the chapel will be decorated for Harvest Home, and the combined vested choirs of Forge and Ayer will sing the Harvest Cantata in place of a sermon. Mrs. Alfred Drolet and 2 children have returned from Montreal, where they passed the summer. Mrs. William Venn and family of Keighley, England, sailed Saturday, October 24th. Upon their arrival, they will come to this village, where they intend to settle. Mr. Venn came some time ago. The name of this town is spelled here as Keithley, which is the way it is pronounced, but the correct spelling of the town is Keigley. I have this on the best of authority. Mickey Crocker's parents are from Keighley. That's the news in Westford for the week ending October 31st, 1908. Thank you for listening, and thanks to Nick Woodbury of WestfordCAT for providing technical support. You can find transcriptions and podcasts from the Wardsman at our website at museum.westford.org, or visit the Historical Society's Facebook page for more Westford news from a century ago. This is Bob Oliphant, and I hope you will join us for next week's Westford Wardsman podcast. Thank you.